With the 2023 NFL Draft quickly approaching, many people, and rightfully so, have their minds set solely on which players will be newly acquired and occupying the 53-man rosters in the upcoming season. Well, in this video, I'm going to turn the clock back just a few years and give you all a retrospective view as well as some grades for the Carolina Panthers 2020 draft class, and we're going to get into all of that right after this.
From the foe, you dig?
Welcome to The Way I See It with Jamario Rashad. This is a Carolina Panthers fan channel. Please do me a favor by hitting the like button, and please make sure you subscribe as I am on my road to 2K, trying to get this channel popping before the season starts. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right into these grades. Now, the first player I am going to talk about was the last player selected, as we are going to do this in reverse order from the bottom to the top of the draft. Be it the last player selected was Stanley Thompson Oliver III, cornerback from Florida International. He was drafted in the 7th round, 221st overall. Now, in 3 years, Oliver III has been active in 25 of a possible 50 games, but he has only been active for, get this, a total of 94 defensive snaps. Now, in both 2020 as well as 2021, he allowed for a completion percentage of 100% when he was the closest defender targeted, meaning when he lined up opposite of a wide receiver and a quarterback deemed or chose to throw the ball in his direction, the wide receiver caught it literally every single time. In 2020, completions allowed by him on 9 passes in his direction, there were 9 completions. Move that into 2021, he was targeted 2 times and allowed 2 catches. Now, in 2022, he was only active for three total games, and he played absolutely no defensive snaps whatsoever and only played half of the special team snaps, and he ended his season on IR. So with all of these circumstantial things being the case, Stanley Thompson Oliver III not making any impact on the team whatsoever and barely even being able to crack the depth chart to be able to be a relevant special teams player, I am unfortunately going to have to give this acquisition a D-. It is not a complete failure, as he is still currently on the roster. He has saw some time, although it wasn't adequate. He was able to at least get on the field and play some, but it wasn't significant. But he still at least hasn't lost his spot on the roster, so I can't deem it to be a complete failure, man. So the next player that we're going to talk about was none other than defensive tackle BRAVION Roy, who was drafted in the 6th round, 184 overall out of Baylor. Now, in 3 years, BRAVION Roy has been active for 45 of a possible 50 games, and in fact, he has started in 15 of those games. The only time that he has been actually out or not active was due to injury. So although he was drafted in the later rounds, he did straight out make the team from his rookie year. He was never placed on the practice squad. He made the 53-man roster, and he has held steady since then. Now, in 3 seasons, he has 76 total tackles with 8 QB hits, and he only had 1 sack, which took place in his rookie year. He has not had any sacks in the following 2 years. Now, in 2022, unfortunately, BRAVION Roy lost his spot on the depth chart with the acquisition of Matt Ioannidis, who in fact was a very good player when he was on the field at that defensive tackle position, either behind Derrick Brown or playing alongside of him in whichever sets that we ran out on the field that required both of their services at that time. Now, moving into this next year, we have to assume that BRAVION Roy will see even less time moving into 2023, as the Carolina Panthers have in fact signed Shai Tuttle to come in and be a defensive tackle alongside of Derrick Brown, who is still here. So Bravion Roy, moving into year 4, probably will not see any more time than he has in the last 3 years, and I cannot see him proving to be any more impactful than he's been so far. So I don't want to say unfortunately, but this wasn't completely successful, but it wasn't a failure in any way. So I am going to have to deem this draft acquisition a C in terms of a grade. With him being drafted so late in this draft and still being able to put forth some type of production, although he never was a flat out starter, getting 15 games in there, like that's nearly an entire season worth of starting experience. Although he did not put up big time stats, it was more circumstantial why he didn't get to see the field with the acquisitions of free agents that just so happened to be at his position. Does that speak to the coaching staff or the overall team not believing in his abilities? I will leave that for you to decide. But in my opinion, for what he was able to do with his draft status, still being a member of the Carolina Panthers, I am going to give Bravion Roy a C, man. Now we're going to move on into our next player, who in fact was safety Kenny Robinson, who was drafted in the 5th round, 152nd overall from West Virginia, but he in fact played his last year of ball before being drafted into the NFL in the XFL with the St. Louis Battlehawks. Now that may be a very cool sounding story, but honestly that is pretty much where Kenny Robinson's story starts and ends with the Carolina Panthers. He was active in his first 2 years for 19 of a possible 34 games, but to begin year 3 in 2022, he was placed on the practice squad, not even cracking the 53-man active roster. And then before the season was even over with, in mid-season, before 2023 even rolled around, Kenny Robinson was cut from the team. He would go on to be signed to a reserved or future contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but being only 3 years into his career and already no longer being with the team, there is no other way I can deem this acquisition than to say it was a flat-out failure and give the drafting of Kenny Robinson an F, as I did like to watch him in the old XFL before everything was shut down and all that good stuff. Seeing that he was not able to be any type of impactful player for my team, it does kind of hurt me that it didn't pan out. But I have to be objective and say that he didn't give anything to my boy. So Kenny Robinson, in fact, was a F, man. Now let's move on to our 4th rounder, Troy Pride Jr., cornerback of Notre Dame, or from Notre Dame. He was drafted in the 4th round, 113 overall. Now, in his rookie season, Troy Pride Jr. actually played in 14 games, and he started in 8 as a rookie. But since then, it has been nothing but a constant landslide downhill from then. During his rookie season, to speak to how he performed, he gave up a 70.7% completion percentage when his receiver was targeted, and he also conceded a passer rating of 117.8 when he was the closest defender. So although he was a rookie, he was not a very effective rookie whatsoever. Now moving into year 2 is where the sadness in the Troy Pride narrative will begin to take place, as in the preseason opener, not even the season opener, Troy Pride in the preseason opener unfortunately tore his ACL and would go on to miss the entirety of 2021. Now he came back and he missed the entirety of 2021. Now, fast forward to May of 2022, which would be the off season before this past season that just ended a few months ago. Troy Pride, in fact, almost over a year after this unfortunate ACL tear, failed his physical with the team and was unfortunately waived and released and would not play football for that season either. Fortunately, Troy Pride Jr. was able to sign a future reserved contract with the New Orleans Saints, but this is a business, and although his circumstances were somewhat sad, and I hate hearing stories like this where injury is the reason why we didn't see a guy pan out. I am going to unfortunately have to deem this to be no more than a D. I do not want to deem it a complete failure, as he was just not an ineffective player of his own volition. I did expect, or one would expect, that moving into year 2 or year 3, there would be some type of natural progression that goes along with experience that I would expect for Troy Pride to have at least enjoyed. But unfortunately, with the injuries that he suffered, we were not able to see that 4.26 speed in a Carolina Panthers uniform for very long. So that is why I deem to give Troy Pride a D. Now we are moving into the top of the draft, the first 3 picks, the guys that I'm pretty sure everybody that clicked on this video truly wanted to hear about. But the first of those 3 players, or the third that was drafted, is in fact Jeremy CHINN, who was drafted in the second round, 64th overall, from Southern Illinois. Now, Jeremy CHINN, coming out of college, was in fact deemed to be a safety, but in his rookie year, the Carolina Panthers chose to play him as a linebacker. Now, the story goes, in 3 years, Jeremy CHINN has been active for 42 of a possible 50 games, and he has started in every single one of those games, not just cracking the roster, but being a day one starter for the Carolina Panthers. In his rookie season, he came in second for Defensive Player of the Year voting, only behind Chase Young of the then Washington football team. So if Chase Young had not had such a breakout season, being a top 5 pick that everybody had already wanted to give the trophy to before the season, and the Carolina Panthers had been just a little bit better, I think Jeremy CHINN may have been able to edge out Chase Young in that year to be the Defensive Rookie of the Year, as he was an absolute beast for the Carolina Panthers. Now, after his rookie season, because Jeremy CHINN is so versatile, for whatever reason, the Carolina Panthers coaching staff decided to transition him to be a full-time safety, and that is where some of his issues may have began. But before we get into the knocks on his game, I would be remiss if I did not mention that since 2020, or among the players drafted in the 2020 draft, Jeremy CHINN has the 3rd most tackles of literally every single player drafted in that draft, only behind Jordan Brooks of the Seattle Seahawks and Patrick Queen of the Baltimore Ravens. Jeremy CHINN, as a hybrid linebacker safety, in just 3 years has 194 solo tackles, which, as I mentioned, is 3rd from the 2020 draft class. Now, to speak into what are the things that may be holding Jeremy CHINN back, that would be in his transition to being a full-time safety. Jeremy CHINN did oftentimes struggle in playing coverage. Now, in his first 2 years in the NFL, be it as a linebacker as well as the first year that he changed to a safety, he allowed for a passer rating over 100 when targeted. And even in this most recent year, be it 2022, Jeremy CHINN still allowed for a 93% passer rating when he was targeted. So when he does exclusively play or use his skills at the safety position, he does at times get exposed and with his lack of coverage skills. But personally, I blame that more so on the coaching staff or for choosing or electing to just play him at that safety spot exclusively after seeing how effective he was at the linebacker position as a rookie. I don't really understand why that would be the case. Just to give you a little context, in 2022, Jeremy Chinn only was sent on a blitz 13 times. Now compare that to his rookie year as a linebacker, where, as I mentioned, he came in second place for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He was sent on a blitz 65 times. That was more than 4 times than he was as a third-year player, as a more experienced player, as a more capable player. I put that more so in the hands of the coaching staff not playing him correctly, and that is not something that is necessarily Jeremy Chinn's fault. But moving into 2023 under Ejiro Evero and working in that 3-4 system, I believe that Jeremy Chinn is going to be an absolute beast, and I am expecting Pro Bowl from Jeremy Chinn. But to give a grade to this player after 3 years, I am going to have to say that Jeremy Chinn has been a B. He was a positive. He is a positive, and he is going to continue to be a positive acquisition from this draft. And I believe if I were to do this same video next year or in the subsequent years, this grade may be higher. As I mentioned, I believe that he will be even more dynamic in the 3-4 system. Now we're going to move into these top 2 players. The second drafted being YETUR GROSS-MATOS, defensive end, who was drafted in the second round, 38th overall from Penn State. Now, this name is not one that is very celebrated throughout the annals of Carolina Panthers fandom. YETUR GROSS-MATOS has been, in my opinion, a disappointment, to say the least. But I do have a few points that I want to make to support my thinking on that. Now, for starters, he has been active in 43 of a possible 50 games, but he's only been a starter for 26 of those games. Now, in his rookie year, he did not play very much, as he was behind Brian Burns, as well as a random assortment of defensive ends, whomever the Carolina Panthers were throwing out there in 2020. Now, moving into 2021, we had Brian Burns ascending for a second year, but we also had the emergence of Haason Reddick, who would go on to get defensive player of the year nominations with the Philadelphia Eagles in this past year after leaving us. So with Haason Reddick's departure, the expectation was that YETUR GROSS-MATOS was going to be able to step into that defensive end role and at least sufficiently impact the pass rush in some way, shape, or form. But that actually just was not the case. Now, in 3 total years in the NFL, YETUR GROSS-MATOS only has 8.5 sacks, but in 2022, as a full-time starter in 17 games, starting in 17 of those games, playing in 70 plus percent of the snaps in each one of those games, YETUR GROSS-MATOS was unfortunately only able to tally up 2.5 sacks, which was like half of what the backup Marcus Haynes was able to come in and do in less than 50% of the total defensive snaps and get 5. YETUR GROSS-MATOS, as a full-time starter, wasn't even able to impact the pass rush to the tune more than just 2.5 sacks. If you watch the game, he would routinely get juked out of his shoes by non-athletic quarterbacks in the pocket, just with one simple, just boom. I know my camera can't catch that real fast, but with just one move, he was gone. He was just getting left, and as soon as they broke out of the pocket, he was just out of frame on TV. He wouldn't make any impact whatsoever. People would argue that he has been effective in the run defense, but to this point, that does not that does not equate, or that does not make up for his lack of an ability to pass the QB, to rush the QB. I mean, so unfortunately, YETUR GROSS-MATOS, being a second round pick that we passed on Jalen Hurts for, that I need to remind you all of, is a D. I don't really have much else to say about it other than D is for disappointment, and he has been disappointing, to say the least. Now, let's move into the big name on the list, our first round pick, and the one that you all see prominently in the thumbnail, Derrick Brown Jr., defensive tackle from Auburn, drafted in the first round, 7th overall. Now, Derrick Brown has been active in 49 of 50 total games, and he has started in 46 of those games, being an absolute Iron Man in the middle of the field, facing contact each and every play, but still fighting off the injury bug and staying on the field for 70+% of the defensive snaps for 3 straight years. He is proven to just be a very reliable chess piece in the middle of this defense. Now, I myself was not the most or the biggest fan of Derrick Brown over his first 2 years. I was one of those people that was inching very close and actually got on the Derrick Brown is a bust train, because I was looking for that pass rushing ability. I was not knowing what exactly did we draft this guy for. What is his role if he is just absolutely never going to be around the quarterback? Well, in 2022, Derrick Brown answered all of those questions for me, as his talents were on display each and every week, being a complete defensive stalwart at the line of scrimmage, disrupting run plays behind the line, getting to the quarterback, tackles for loss, just balling each and every game, single-handedly at times, controlling the other team's run game, and just being completely dominant at the point of attack. Now, in his 3rd year, he nearly doubled his output in terms of tackles, while disrupting the run, as I mentioned, all year. He did not necessarily put together much tape that he should be, or we as a team are proud of, in terms of his ability to rush the passer. But in him not doing so, the overall versatility that he has as a player, as a super athletic big man on this team, was put on display, to the tune of 7 pass deflections, which was tied for the lead on the team with J.C. Horn. He had 12 QB hits, as well as 1 sack, and many tackles for loss. He was just dominant and all over the field, proving why he was drafted so high in this draft, man. So I say all of that to say that I am looking forward and expecting a very big 2023 out of Derrick Brown. But in terms of how I grade him after 3 years, I am going to give Derrick Brown a B, as I did Jeremy Chinn, man. I believe that Jeremy Chinn, although Derrick Brown showed to be a potential star this year, I think Jeremy Chinn arguably is still the best player that we drafted, and has been the most effective player that we drafted in the 2020 draft. But Derrick Brown himself is right there. So if they're not 1-2, they are 1A, 1B. Derrick Brown is going to be an absolute monster in the middle of this team for the next 5 years to a decade. And that is why I chose to deem him as a B, man. But that is going to conclude my breakdown, my retrospective, my grades for the Carolina Panthers 2023 draft class. You all leave your comments down below. What do you all think of these players? How are they stacking up against, I guess, other draft classes? Who do you think? What do you think about all the guys that have fallen off? Do you think that this upcoming draft class would be better? Whatever your thoughts are, make sure you put them down in the comments, and I will be sure to get back to you then. But with that being said, remember, I am Jamario Rashad. This is the way I see it, and I'm out. Peace.